they crossed the river, right?
Yeah. They effected the crossing on the 11th, as memory serves. So about this time, right now, 7 o'clock, they'd be sacking the city.
Lucas did a video with me a few weeks back about that, and he said that was really the first time in history of major urban combat. And he said the way that they wrote about it was what you would see in Iraq or Afghanistan. Yeah. Clearing houses. I mean, because think about it, these guys have never experienced walking in parade formation and all of a sudden getting sniped at from roofs and buildings. I mean, and he said it was like how for giving hand signals and first time that I guess that's the part that's always fascinated me more about the battle was the actual urban combat in the town.
Yeah, I think what's notable about that, and frankly, as a veteran of modern warfare, I think you can appreciate this more than most. Barksdale's Mississippi Brigade basically holds the entire Army of Potomac for an entire day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the 100, I think he had 125,000. Of course, he didn't put all of them in action, but yeah, 1,400 men. Yeah. I mean, it was amazing.
It's extraordinary. And I think it's reflective of the future of modern warfare with urban warfare. And I mean, they're doing this with muskets, right? I mean, if you gave Barksdale a few machine guns, I suspect they'd have held quite a great deal longer. It's quite interesting. I mean, I think it tends to get overlooked for, good reason by the fighting on the 13th. Right. But, it really is... I mean, my understanding is it's the first modern example of urban warfare. I'm sure there have been battles through towns before, but as far as I know, it's the first example where a town was used for house-to-house fighting with firearms. And it's what I mean. It's honestly it's the highlight of Barksdale's career. Well, I mean, arguably, it's that or the Barksdale's assault on the peach orchard. Which was probably the greatest moment of his life.
I mean, it totally changed warfare for future generations. I mean, you hold up in a city and you can inflict massive casualties, gate overwhelming forces. When you go into a house-to-house, room-to-room, street-to-street fight.
But that's interesting though, because how often do you see that? For example, at Gettysburg, the Federals do fight through the town inch by inch, but you don't see that kind of urban defense that you do in Fredericksburg. And I couldn't offer an explanation as to why, but you certainly don't see to that extent. I mean, you have examples of folks using individual buildings for defensive purposes. One of the best examples being on the second day, I forget which house it was, but oh good Lord, which general was it? One of the brigades that should have supported Rand's right on Cemetery Hill, Posey. There we go. Posey's brigade ended up deploying and spending its entire brigade force attacking a house with a couple of federal sharpshooters, which was an idiotic response, but certainly for the sharpshooters, an excellent example of the application of urban warfare. But it's not as concentrated, it's not as well planned or executed as Barksdale's defense of Fredericksburg. And I personally, I can't think of any other example in the Civil War where urban defense is used that effectively.
Not to that. I think there was a little bit around Atlanta, but nothing to that magnitude where you had, like you said, an entire brigade hold off an army, in a house-to-house, street-to-street, room-to-room fight.
And remember, Atlanta isn't taken by a direct attack like Fredericksburg. Ultimately, Atlanta is sieged, right? The Confederates lose it because they take the offensive and fail at Peachtree Creek. And I think it, and that's the thing, when you say it defines future warfare, the reason I would say I don't know if I agree is only because I think a lot of the lessons of the Civil War are ignored, right? And I would personally blame the Franco-Prussian War for that. But because I think the Franco-Prussian War reinforced rather romantic and mythological views of warfare, that it could be quick and timely in modernity, whereas I think the Franco-Prussian War was quick and efficient by a series of accidents and the incompetency of Napoleon III, not because modern warfare actually lent itself to an efficient war. I think it's an outlier. But when you get to World War One, very few lessons from the Civil War are learned. They have to be relearned. Hell, Emery Upton's strategy for taking entrenched positions has to be rediscovered by the Europeans by 1916.
Yeah, we talk about the tactics outdated in the Civil War. And I said, well, what tactics would we have used? And he said, really, they had not been outdated by that point.
Yeah.
It was war. And, but I wonder back to that. I wonder who came up with this idea. Hey, let's put a brigade of troops on rooftops and buildings and just snipe at them. And can you imagine the anxiety these soldiers must have felt? Never imagining this was going to take.
Especially when you consider that the esprit de corps of any regiment in the Civil War is shoulder to shoulder, right?
Right.
And you can see this when you have mixed units in situations where regiments became dispersed and mixed into regiments, other brigades, they break very quickly because they don't have any confidence in the man beside them. I mean, fundamentally, all warfare up until the First World War is basically Greek warfare. It's all about phalanx. If you trust the man beside you, you can hold. If you don't, you won't. There's a lot more tactics and innovation, but fundamentally it comes down to your ability to maintain your position until you're killed or wounded, or you win or you withdraw. As cruel as that is. When you're fighting in urban warfare, all of a sudden you have to break up into squads. And you're not shoulder to shoulder. And in Cause and Comrade, McPherson describes, he paraphrases one veteran who described the kind of intoxicating anxiety of battle. And he described it as that when you see cannonballs cracking tree trunks like eggshells, that the horror of going forward is only outmatched by the fear of being a coward in front of your comrades. And so you have to march forward towards that danger, creating an intense anxiety. And that is the essence of the phalanx. I can't let the men beside me down. What's incredible about Barksdale's defense is there's no physical contact. And I really think that would make a huge difference. Probably ameliorated by the fact that they're relatively safe. I'd rather be inside of a house shooting out than outside of a house shooting in.
When you're outside trying to, you're going around a corner. I mean, it's hard. You can't explain it unless you've actually experienced it. I mean, you can see it. It was amazing, and I just wonder, who came up with that idea? Because it was a brilliant plan.
I don't know, and that's a good question. I don't know. My extremely limited understanding of it is Barksdale was tasked with delaying the Federal rear guard action, and he made a field day of it.
See,
interesting because Barksdale basically told fight the entire Federal army, which he loved to do, and then at Gettysburg he's given the same orders. He somehow succeeds twice, but I don't know the idea.
Because and that would be terrible. Like, flying, shooting at people from rooftops. There would be an honor in that.
If I can, if I can try to wrap it up in a bow, I might suggest that, and I'm just spitballing here, but I think to an extent, the defense of Fredericksburg is an extension of the evolution of classic Civil War era. Because one of the things that evolved from the Civil War era, which is really notable, is the use of skirmishers. Skirmish troops existed long before the Civil War, but the mass adoption of the rifle really changed the role of skirmishers, and increasingly more and more regiments act as skirmishers. Hell, the 1866 manual pretty much recommended, or no, sorry, it was a theoretician recommending in the U.S. by 66 that infantry lines should no longer be shoulder to shoulder; they should deploy as skirmishers. And by the time you get to the First World War, effectively, you are deploying as skirmishers. So you really in the Civil War, you see the evolution of the skirmisher as the new fusilier, right? And I think that the defense of Fredericksburg is an evolution of that. With a rifle, a individual can separate from his comrades with cover and do significant damage. With the ability to actually take their time to take aim behind cover, they can do real damage. So I kind of see the defense of Fredericksburg as an evolution of that concept. It's skirmisher writ large. And by the end of the war, both sides are doing it. You see skirmishers in many instances almost taking the place of fusiliers. For example, take the attack on redoubts 9 and 10 or 9 and 11. The Dinwiddie line of Petersburg. Butler has his men deploying as skirmishers and attacking batteries as skirmishers because that works better than being consolidated lines. So I think it's part of that evolution. But Fredericksburg is the only time where skirmishers are used specifically for the defense of the city, and it's really interesting.
I think they could put more. I just the strength of Mary's Heights.
I can't quite hear you.
What now?
I can't quite hear you. It sounds like I'm losing every second word.
Are you talking to me or?
Yeah.
Oh, something on TV?
I can hear you better now. You're good. Just if you're looking at the screen, I can hear you. You're fine. As long as you're looking at the camera, you're good. If you look away from it, I can't.
Hey, Rick.
Also, Everett Thompson.
What do you think happened with
What do I think? What?
Burnside? I mean, he sees the disaster. He sees his falling, and he just keeps throwing good money after bad. He's stubborn, just refused to give in.
Okay, so on the 13th. I honestly, okay, so Fredericksburg is very frustrating because the Federals should have won that battle. Burnside is a bit of a mess as a commander, which is why I like him so much. I'm a bit of a Burnside apologist. I think he's better than folks give him credit for. He's certainly not a great general.
I would agree that he's not as bad of a general as what he's made out to be.
I mean, exactly. I mean, he's not very good, but
I mean, he has moments. Knoxville. There was besides Burnside's Bridge, he did do well somewhat at Antietam, but he was not. Some men are not. The Grand, and another thing too that he made a mistake. The Grand Division, he ended up with too many.
Yeah.
Too much command.
Burnside really stands out at New Bern, and I love Grant, and I grudgingly respect Meade. But if they hadn't interrupted his plans for the crater, it might have gone a lot better as well. And it wasn't fair that he was the scapegoat. But with respect to Fredericksburg, it's important to remember that Mars Heights was not the objective.
Right. People don't realize that. And he was focused on what was we talked about me and him talked about the other night, the other fight that was going on where they was almost turned a brigade almost turned Jackson's flank.
Oh, it did. So the plan was to launch continuous assaults on Mars Heights that could be converted to an attack in order to entertain the enemy, while the Second Grand Division under General Franklin attacked Prospect Hill and turned Jackson's lines. Now, General Hill, AP, DH, had been gently ejected from the Army of Northern Virginia for his total incapacity with literally anyone but himself. He was cantankerous as they come. And General Hill had, DH Hill was still there, but not for long. Anyway, AP Hill was supposed to move his division along Prospect Hill and the Telegraph Road, but along the swamps of the Prospect Hill, he decided not to deploy his troops because those were generally impassable. The problem for Hill was that December of 1862 was the coldest winter Virginia had had in about a century. So the swamp was actually frozen solid and completely passable. So when he failed to deploy his troops, he created a gap. This is very similar to Rosecrans at the Battle of Chickamauga. And what happened at that point was General Meade's division basically walked right through it, while Gibbon was slamming away up the right. So Meade's division broke through. I think Meade at that point begged General Smith to support him, and Smith said no, he wouldn't do so because they were different corps. And I believe one of Meade's staffers said that he thought for a second Meade was going to withdraw his pistol and shoot Smith through the brain, which, to be perfectly honest, wouldn't be entirely unjustified in that situation. He never forgave Smith for this, nor should he have, because Smith, stupidly, sacrificed one of the best chances they had to win the war. So they had a breakthrough. The problem was Burnside made two huge mistakes here, both of which are completely consistent with this character. One, he gave the command of the central attack to Franklin, a man who had a reputation for timidity. It should have gone to someone like Joe Hooker. Problem is, Burnside hated Hooker, but if he had given it to Hooker, Hooker would have smashed the hell out of them.
Army. He didn't want
I said to someone who's I'm a bit of a Joe Hooker fan. The other reason that was a mistake was if Prospect Hill is the target of your attack, as commanding general, you should be there, not at the point of demonstration. That should be left to Franklin. But Burnside had no idea that Franklin had completely failed to support the attack on Prospect Hill. So he continued to assault Mars Heights under the belief that Franklin was about to turn Jackson's line at any moment, not knowing that he had totally failed to do so and had given up on doing so. If command and control had been adequately centralized, if Burnside had exercised proper command over his attack on the Confederate right, Fredericksburg might have been the incredible breakthrough that they needed in that war. It was a good plan. It was very poorly executed. And that was very similar to the Battle of Manassas.
What you got? You got something?
Oh, sorry. Everett, you're muted for me. Hold on.
That one, man.
Everett, I think you're muted.
Hold up, let me see. Everett, are you muted?
Yeah, you're muted. I'd love to hear what you're saying, but I can't. You have to unmute yourself.
Hold up. Let's see how to.
Yeah. Okay, I'm okay now.
Yep.
Here you go.
Yeah, I don't think I'll blame Burnside, and I would more blame General Franklin. I think he should have been dismissed from the army because he held about 50 to 60,000 troops and didn't send them and give Longstreet or Jackson ample time to reinforce that breach.
Yeah.
With the communication, not like now, you couldn't burn Burnside that he would pick up his cell phone and call Franklin to move in. Franklin was right there and watching the whole thing.
I mean,
so
it was
maybe a little bit too harsh on Burnside there. Maybe Franklin should be court-martial, should have been court-martial.
If I can, first off, Everett, I agree with you. Franklin deserves a lot of blame for the loss of Fredericksburg. But I would say that ultimately the buck stopped with the leader.
With the commander.
could have been there. Just like Bragg at the Battle of Chickamauga, if Bragg wants the attack to start from the right, he needs to be in communication with the right. Burnside has this consistent problem of failing to do so. I agree with you that Burnside does take full responsibility, but ultimately, if Burnside wants the attack to be executed on the federal left, he should have been on the federal left. And that's the kind of oversight. I like Burnside a lot. I think he's a good guy. I think he's underrated as a general, but he should have been there.
They said got guys who don't know. Or is that better to have somebody going up there not knowing what they're walking into the jaws of death?
Well, I mean, from what I've read accounts from the battle, I think a lot of them realized that the attack was pretty poorly planned on my side, especially after the first wave. Remember that they're marching forward, not only looking at the catastrophic right, getting the Federals, but they're also marching forward against the retreating Federals. So they know they're lost. What's tragic is that because there's no command and control, they're falling useless. That's what's brutal about Fredericksburg. The battle could have been won. The loss was unacceptable. Oh, by the way, Everett, do you mind putting your volume down a little bit? I think my echo is doing it. I can't hear Chris.
I'm not hearing you. I'm not hearing you.
Can you hear me?
I don't hear the question.
All right.
Was there a question?
Says,
Never mind.
up front will be sure. Begging your pardon, sir. The only thing will be still will be lives.
No, was there a question? I didn't get the question.
It's just hard to hear for some reason. Everett, would you mind turning the volume down on your end a little bit, because we can hear our own echoes and that's making it hard to hear.
Okay, okay.
Thank you so much.
Well, so, in general, Chamberlain tells well, Lisa will be interested about
Sorry?
lives. Do you remember that one?
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you. Don't you love Zoom?
No, I'm not hearing it. I'm gonna try to see if I can bring up the volume. I'm not
I
hearing
can hear
it.
you, Everett. I just can't hear Chris.
He told the sergeant up Buster.
I'm not versatile on Fredericksburg, so I have to just listen to you guys.
Well, I mean, I think you know your stuff. I think you have a pretty excellent Burnside earlier, so I think you know better than most folks do. Franklin's one of those folks who I think benefits from historical ignorance. Nobody knows who General Franklin is. Nobody blames him for his many failings after war, which were voluminous. He just wasn't a very good general. Hell, the best attack in his entire career was on the Sunken Road in Antietam. That was a mistake. He didn't even mean to hit it. Just ran smack dab into it.
That is.
Anyway, I hate to say this, but I actually do have to get going in a sec. I have a couple commitments tonight. Unless there's anything else I can chat about Fredericksburg life that you want to hear from little old me, I have to get going, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's okay. Sorry I joined late, but next time we'll talk.
Just for some reason, everyone wants me at 7, so I told everybody 20 minutes on this, 20 minutes on that. I don't know why. One wants me at 7. Oh. But it is very nice to meet you, Everett. I don't think we've met before, but it's very nice to meet you.
No,
And
yes.
always a pleasure. Sorry I got to split, but I promised I'd play some Phasmophobia with a friend of mine, and I have to go.
Okay.
You want me a discussion about a thought strategy, right?
Sorry?
Everett, don't you? No, a thought strategy. Don't we?
Well, the Fabian strategy.
I think Chris froze. Fabian strategy. I think you're saying.
Yeah, we have to discuss the Fabian strategy, but I don't think I can do it tonight, or maybe the next hour or so before we could discuss it.
Promised me that for a long time.
Sorry, I got to split in a second, but if I can just make one comment on Fabius, I wouldn't apply the Fabius strategy to the Battle of Fredericksburg because
No, it's the entire campaign under Joseph Johnson.
Yeah, okay, no, that's Fabius to a T. That
Yes,
is radically Fabius.
Joseph Johnson.
I think it wouldn't have worked, but it is interesting.
And
yes, that's what me and Chris should have discussed some months ago. But we don't get a chance to do it as yet, but we hope to do it soon.
So,
Chris, if you ever would be interested in three of us talking about the Fabian strategy and Johnson, I'd love to. I can't tonight, but I would love to do that. That is an interesting line of discussion.
Yes, you and Chris could plan a date, and I could fill in at that time.
yeah, let's do that. Time for popular strategy. Because I've been wanting to have a discussion where we talks about strategy, different types of stuff. That sounds great.
I'll catch you guys later. Everett, great to meet you. Chris, nice to see you. Have a great night, guys.
Okay. Over and out.
My man. So when are we doing the strategy?
Okay, maybe tomorrow evening if possible.
Okay, I mean I got time. I got going on right now, so anytime you we can sit down and we'll go over retreat Joe Johnson and his fight.
Yes.
Last fallback position, and he'd been looking for a fallback position.
So yeah, I have some things to do now. So if I finish in time, I'll give you a text later and see if it's possible or not tomorrow evening. Okay.
I'll stay up all night, so
Yes. Yeah, I'll get back to you if it's possible for the rest of the night. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.